The room returns the way a held breath returns. Dust floats in a thin beam where a window once faced the alley. The floor carries an outline no one has stepped on in years. Time feels pinned here like a note left under glass. I stand still and let the quiet work. This is how the past opens, not with sound but with patience. The air smells of old paper and wood. My shoes know where to stop. I have been here before and I left something behind. I come back without ceremony. No tape, no lights, no crowd, just a key that still fits. The place was an apartment above a closed bakery in a small Indiana town that liked routine. In 1993, this room was ordinary. That is the detail that never leaves. Ordinary rooms hold events longer than dramatic ones. The ordinary gives nothing away. It keeps everything. Her name was Maribel Quince. She was 23. She worked mornings at the public library, shelving returns with careful hands. She painted at night small canvases, landscapes without people. She kept a notebook of weather observations, written in neat blocks. She sent postcards to her sister and never signed them, as if the words themselves were enough. People remember her laugh as soft. People remember her patience as practiced. Those memories sit like artifacts with no labels. I touch the wall where a calendar once hung. The paper mark remains, a lighter square. It is December on that calendar, a season that carries a kind of quiet expectation. I remember thinking then that expectation was a clue. It was not. Expectation is only wait. The case file opens with the sound of paper surrendering. Pages whisper. The first photograph is the room as it was, empty yet specific. A chair angled away from the table, a lamp unplugged, a window latch misaligned by a few degrees. In 1993, I told myself the misalignment mattered. I wrote it down. Today I see the margin note beside it, my handwriting tight and confident. I am less impressed now. There was no sign that announced itself. That is what the reports say. They say the scene was contained. They say there was nothing obvious to chase. We chased anyway. We chased movement. We chased people who were loud because loudness feels like direction. It was a mistake made gently, and gently is how mistakes survive. I sit on the floor and read a statement from a neighbor who liked early walks. The words are clean. The times are approximate. He recalls a light on later than usual. He recalls a sound he could not place, like furniture meeting floor. He recalls thinking nothing of it. The page does not tremble. The past does not argue. There is a smell of dust and ink. The sound of the page is heavier now. Another photograph, a close view of the table, on it a small stack of postcards blank. A pencil sharpened too often. The point is thin, fragile. This detail mattered. It still does. I did not know why then. I do now. Maribel's background is ordinary in the ways that complicate memory. Born in Fort Wayne, 1 year at a community college, a pause to work, a return planned for the fall, no debts that rose above the waterline, no arguments that left a mark. Her world was narrow by choice. Narrow worlds leave fewer prints. I read my own notes and hear the voice I had then. It is eager, decisive, tidy. It wanted closure because closure reads well. The town wanted closure too. It gathered at the diner and traded sentences that felt useful. People prefer answers shaped like people. We gave them shapes. A fragment of dialogue lives in the margins, quoted without context. She was careful. Another fragment later, I locked the door. Words without anchors drift. We tried to tie them. I find the envelope with the lab summary. The paper is thicker than memory. The summary is brief. The conclusions are conservative. That word always pretends to be neutral. Conservative conclusions can be correct and still incomplete. I remember how quickly we moved past this page, how quickly we went to something that felt active. The investigator returns to the scene quietly, they say. I return as someone older. I return as someone who has learned to wait. The evidence feels like ghosts, not because it is gone, but because it stands where it always stood, unseen until acknowledged. I let the room tell me what it did not tell me before. A photo from the hallway catches my eye. It always did. The doorframe carries a faint scrape, shallow, recent then. We thought it came from furniture. We wrote that. We believed it. Belief has a way of settling. I take out a ruler from my bag and measure the scrape. It is consistent with something light, not heavy, not a couch, not a table, something carried, not dragged, something that did not want to be seen. This is small. This is devastating. It shifts the map by inches, and inches are enough. Another statement, a friend from the library. She remembers Maribel leaving early that day, a stack of returns still waiting. She said she had to check something. That line sat unnoticed because it did not point. Today it points inward. Check something. The phrase has no object. It is an open door. I listen to the building. Old buildings speak in temperature changes. The radiator clicks, though it no longer works. The click is memory. The sound of paper continues. I turn to the last page of my early report. The conclusion is neat. It uses words like likely and consistent. It does not use the word wrong. There is a photograph we never enlarged. It shows the window latch from a distance. I enlarge it now digitally the way patience allows. The misalignment is not damage. It is adjustment. Someone said it. Someone wanted air without opening. Someone wanted quiet. I think of Maribel's weather notebook. The way she wrote down pressure changes, the way she noticed air, the way she would have noticed this too. The notebook is in the file, misfiled under personal effects. I open it. The last entry is not about weather. It is a list of times, not dates. Times, short. Regular, it is not art. It is observation. A small thing breaks the silence. Not a sound, a realization. The times align with the library schedule, with closing, with the walk home that took the same route every day. The scrape in the hallway makes sense now. The latch makes sense. The pencil sharpened too often makes sense. She was preparing to write something small and precise. I feel the weight of guilt settle without drama. It is not loud. It is mechanical. It clicks into place like a latch adjusted by degrees. We chased noise. We missed quiet. There is one more photograph. It shows the back of the postcards. One has a faint indentation, a word pressed without ink. I hold it to the light. The letters rise, a name. Common, overlooked. The logic is plain. The devastation is complete. Outside, the town continues with its schedule. Inside, the case adjusts itself by inches. Justice will move because it always does in forms and steps. What remains here is smaller. A room that held its breath. A woman who noticed air. An investigator who learned to wait. I leave the room as I found it, unchanged, the quiet restored. Outside, the hallway smells of old varnish and winter coats. The stairs hold a memory of steps taken carefully, always on the right side, always avoiding the loose board. In 1993, we measured paths by speed. Today, I measure them by habit. Habit explains more. Back at the office, the file waits under fluorescent light. I spread it open without urgency. The photographs lie flat. The statements line up like instruments. The notebook sits apart, thinner than it deserves to be. I read it again, slower. The times are not random. They form a pattern that repeats with patient accuracy. Patterns do not accuse. They suggest. The name pressed into the postcard returns. It is common enough to disappear in a crowd. It belonged to someone who worked close, someone whose presence felt normal. That is why it stayed hidden. Normality is camouflage. We trusted it too easily. I pull a personnel list from the library archives. The paper smells newer, cleaner. Names move past without resistance. Then the name settles. A man who handled returns. A man who closed some nights. A man who signed out keys. In 1993, we spoke to him once. The note says cooperative, uneventful. Uneventful is a word that ends inquiry. I read the old interview summary. His answers were short, practiced. He remembered routines, not moments. At the time, it sounded reliable. Now it sounds rehearsed. The difference is subtle, like the latch on the window. Degrees matter. There is no rush in reopening a file. The system prefers patience. I request schedules, time cards, maintenance logs. The requests move through channels without comment. Paper returns. Digital records fill the gaps. The pattern tightens. On 3 evenings marked in Maribel's notebook, his name appears where it should not. Small shifts. Early departures. A swapped shift noted without explanation. I sit with the evidence and listen to my own breathing. This is not triumph. It is alignment. The logic clicks, one quiet step at a time. The hallway scrape becomes a carried item again. The latch becomes intention. The sharpened pencil becomes preparation. A colleague stops by, hesitates at the door. A question forms and dissolves. I say nothing. Silence keeps the shape intact. When I speak, it will be because the words have earned their place. We revisit the storage room behind the library. The air is cooler there. Boxes are labeled in careful hands. A chair sits near a wall where a mark suggests frequent leaning. The floor bears a faint line, repeated pressure. He waited here. Waiting is an action when done regularly. I read a maintenance report from that year, a note about a window that would not seal properly. The repair date matches one of the times in the notebook. The repairman's signature is clear. The cause is listed as user adjustment, not damage, adjustment. The old interview audio still exists, archived on a medium that hums before it plays. His voice is even. He pauses before answering questions about closing. The pauses are not long, they are placed. I hear them now. In 1993, I did not. A new interview is arranged with care. He arrives older, slower. The room is plain. The chairs are placed to avoid angles. The conversation begins without accusation. He fills the space with generalities. He mentions weather. He mentions routine. When the notebook times are placed on the table, his eyes move before his hands do. It is a small movement. It is enough. Fragments of dialogue fall, hesitant, incomplete. I don't remember. A pause. It was a long time. Another pause. The words do not carry weight. The silence does. Silence stretches. He adjusts his chair. The scrape echoes the hallway. The logic is presented gently, not as a story but as a sequence. Schedules, keys, adjustments, the pressed name. Each piece stands alone. Together they stand differently. He listens. His breathing changes. He does not deny. He reframes. Reframing is a habit learned early. I leave the room with the same restraint I brought into it. Outside, paperwork begins its mechanical movement. Forms are filled. Dates are entered. The system turns. It always turns. Justice has a way of feeling procedural when it arrives late. It is still justice. I return once more to the apartment. Not because it is required, but because it is right. The room feels lighter without changing. I stand where the table was. I imagine Maribel sharpening the pencil again, not because it dulled, but because she needed control. Control is a quiet comfort. Her paintings are stored in a municipal archive. I visit them. Small landscapes, empty roads, winter light. She painted air more than land. She understood space. One canvas shows a window half closed. The latch is centered, balanced. I think of the town, how it absorbed the years without resolution, how conversations shifted and settled, how names faded. The solution will arrive there as information, not relief. Relief belongs to individuals, not communities. At my desk, I write the final summary. The language is precise. It avoids drama. It honors sequence. I do not correct my younger self in the margins. I let the record show the path as it unfolded. Records should teach without scolding. There is an expectation that resolution brings quiet. It brings a different noise. Phones ring, messages arrive, schedules adjust. Through it all, the small facts remain small. That is their power. I place the notebook back in its folder. It weighs almost nothing. It carried everything. I close the file with care. The sound is final and not. Files close. Rooms remain. Later, alone, I sit and consider the space between action and understanding. We act with the information we allow ourselves to see. We understand later if we return. Returning is not failure. It is method. The case will be marked solved. The word will appear in databases and summaries. It will feel clean. What remains unmarked is the patience it took to listen again, the willingness to notice degrees. I step outside into Indiana air that has learned many winters. The light is low. The town continues. Somewhere, a window is adjusted for quiet. Somewhere, paper waits to be read properly. Justice moves on rails. It arrives where the track is laid. What stays with me is smaller, human, unfinished. A woman who noticed patterns. A room that kept them. An investigator who learned late to measure silence. Morning arrives without announcement. The office lights hum, steady, indifferent. I read the final pages again, not to change them, but to hear their tone. It matters how conclusions sound when no one is in the room. The language remains measured. It does not lean. It does not plead. It simply places facts in order and steps aside. The arrest paperwork moves through channels that existed long before this case and will exist after it. Names are typed. Dates are confirmed. A signature aligns with a line. The process does not pause to consider years. It measures time only as sequence. I respect that about it. Emotion has no checkbox. I think of Maribel's sister, now older than Maribel ever was. The notification will be delivered with care, with practiced phrases. It will explain what happened without explaining what it cost. Some distances cannot be crossed by information alone. I am not present for that conversation. I do not need to be. Presence is not always assistance. The town responds in pieces, a brief notice, a quiet headline, conversations held low at counters and corners. People test the weight of the news before carrying it. The shock is contained, not explosive. That feels accurate. Truth often arrives smaller than imagined. I return to the library after hours. The building smells of paper and polish. The shelves hold their order. I walk the path Maribel walked, counting steps, not because numbers matter, but because repetition teaches. The storage room remains unchanged. The chair still waits near the wall. Waiting leaves marks. I stand where the returns desk once stood. The angle of the light at closing time creates a narrow shadow. In that shadow, routines feel safe. I understand now how safety can mislead without intention. Safety can be a mask. The notebook remains with evidence, but its echo is here. The way she noticed. The way she wrote without decoration. Observation is a discipline. She practiced it quietly. I failed to match her patience then. I try now. Back at my desk, the file receives its final classification. Solved is a word that closes doors in systems. In people, it opens rooms. Some rooms contain relief. Others contain questions that do not ask to be answered, only acknowledged. I pack the file away. The shelf accepts it without resistance. Thousands of files stand nearby, each with its own measure of quiet. The archive does not judge, it preserves. There is a moment when the body expects something else to happen. A release, a sound. It does not come. The work is done. The feeling is not. This is the part that never appears in reports. I think of the latch again, the degrees of adjustment. How control can be expressed in the smallest acts. How those acts can be overlooked by anyone moving too fast. Speed is a choice. So is slowness. The man who adjusted the latch will face a system designed to process behavior, not intention. The system will do its job. It will be thorough. It will be calm. It will be final in ways that matter to it. I do not follow that path further. My role ended earlier with alignment. I step outside into the afternoon. The air carries the weight of an approaching season change. People move with purpose, unaware of the completed sequence behind them. That is as it should be. Cases do not require witnesses to remain valid. I pass the bakery below the apartment. It never reopened. The windows are covered. The sign is faded. The building keeps its own memory, independent of ours. Places outlast narratives. At home, I open a drawer and find a pencil. I sharpen it once carefully. The point forms cleanly. I stop there. Over-sharpening is a habit born of unease. I place the pencil on the table and leave it untouched. Night comes without ceremony. The light changes. I sit and think about the years between then and now, how easily they filled with other work, other files, other conclusions. I think about how learning arrives without apology. The unresolved part is not the case. It is the space between attention and understanding. I will carry that space forward. It will slow me when speed tempts. It will ask me to listen again. Maribel's paintings remain archived, labeled, protected. They do not change. Roads without people. Windows adjusted just so. Air rendered with care. She knew how to show what was not there. Justice has completed its movement. The rails are quiet. What remains is human and unfinished. A room that waited. A notebook that noticed. A lesson measured in degrees, not years. I let the quiet hold that, and I do not ask it to give anything back. The office is empty when I return, chairs tucked in, lights dimmed to their overnight setting. Silence here is not absence but accumulation, the residue of every decision made within these walls. I sit and let that residue settle. The final segment of a case does not announce itself. It arrives like fatigue, steady, unquestioned. I open the file one last time, not to revise, not to add, but to witness it whole. The sequence now reads clean. Each action rests where it belongs. There are no sharp edges left to smooth. This is the condition people call closure, though it feels more like alignment than ending. I think about how the case began for me, not in 1993, but years later when unease replaced certainty. Unease is a quiet teacher. It does not shout corrections, it waits for humility. I resisted it at first. Most people do. Certainty is efficient. Unease is slow, but slowness is where detail lives. The memory of the apartment returns without force. The dust, the stale air, the rectangle of lighter paint where a calendar once hung. Those details never asked to be interpreted. They only asked to be seen. I missed them once. I did not miss them again. That difference matters more than pride. Maribel Quince exists now in records, reports, archived art, and the private spaces of those who knew her. She is also present in method, in the reminder that observation is not passive. Observation is active restraint. She practiced it naturally. I learned it late. The system will proceed as designed. Dates will be assigned. Processes will unfold. Outcomes will be documented. The machinery of justice does not pause to reflect on its own movement. That reflection belongs elsewhere, to individuals who remember why precision matters. I imagine the sister reading the notice again days later when initial shock has softened into something steadier. She will search the language for meaning beyond information. She may find some. She may not. No document can account for years held open by uncertainty. What it can do is stop the waiting. The town will absorb the resolution unevenly. Some will revisit old assumptions, some will not. Routine will resume because routine always does. That is not indifference, it is survival. Communities carry weight by distributing it thin. I walk through the library once more before leaving the town. The shelves are reordered slightly, newer systems layered over old ones. Knowledge accumulates without judgment. It waits for hands. The returns desk has been replaced, but the angle of the floor remains the same. Floors remember. I pause near the storage room, door closed now, no reason to open it. The waiting that happened there has already been accounted for. Waiting no longer belongs to that space. It belongs to memory, where it can no longer cause harm. Outside, the sky is flat, winter restrained. The air has a clarity that comes after long, cold nights. Breathing feels deliberate. I notice that. Not because it is unusual, but because noticing has become habit. Habits define outcomes more reliably than intentions. Driving away, I do not replay conversations. I replay measurements, inches, degrees, minutes. Those were the margins where truth rested. It was never hidden. It was merely quiet. Quiet requires invitation. At home, I place the pencil back in its drawer. I do not sharpen it again. The point is still clean. Enough. Excess has no role here. Precision does not require repetition once achieved. Sleep comes without interruption. Dreams are sparse, unremarkable. That feels appropriate. The mind rests when alignment replaces tension. Rest is not reward, it is reset. In the morning, I return to other work, other files, other unresolved sequences. Each one asks the same question in different language. Will you rush or will you listen? I know my answer better now. The Maribel Quince file remains closed. It does not call out. Files never do. They wait. When needed, they offer exactly what they contain, nothing more, nothing less. That is their integrity. I accept that some part of this case will remain with me permanently, not as burden, but as calibration. It will adjust my internal instruments when certainty appears too quickly. It will remind me that small deviations accumulate meaning. Justice has completed its formal arc. What remains is human, unfiled, resistant to summary. A woman who noticed patterns, a room that preserved them, an investigator who learned to return quietly without expectation. I step into the day carrying none of the drama people expect from resolution. Instead, there is a steadiness, a neutral balance restored. The world does not change shape, only attention does. This is where the story ends, not with declaration, but with measured quiet. The kind that holds lessons without displaying them. The kind that allows what is finished to stay finished, and what is human to remain open.